My name is Sig, and it is a complete pleasure to have this time with you. In today's tutorial, I will walk you through the process of how I made this beautiful custom backpack for my daughter. She does aerial dancing, and so that's why you see kind of that customized, specialized lace piece in the front. So in this tutorial, we'll be focused on the actual backpack and the mountain scene in the back. I will show you how I created and then crocheted this mountain design. But this will also make it possible for you to see how to create your own design if you'd prefer to do that. At the end of this video, I will show you a quick progression of the steps I went through to make the lacework motif that you see here. It's your support that allows me to contribute content and weekly videos. Help us grow together by tapping that subscribe bar, notification bell, and like button. I look forward to your comments and always value your feedback. Now let's get started. For this backpack, I had to do a couple of things to customize it. So the first thing I did was I bought some components to make my life a little easier, and then also it lends a lot of extra strength to the pack so that my daughter can toss it around, carry it around, and it doesn't fall apart. So what I did was I bought some backpack components. I got these off of Amazon, and I've seen them sold on Etsy as well. And so for her, because I wanted to be able to put that specific laced motif that she really wanted me to make for her onto the front of it, I purchased the components to the backpack that actually came with a zipper for the top. So like your standard backpack's going to have the flap that goes over. That wasn't going to work for me because I needed that space for the motif. And then also another thing about this pack that I really like, or the components to this pack that I really like, is that it had a base, right? And while I'm obviously going to be crocheting the base, I really like the idea of having a base because not only did it give me these extra tabs in which to connect or clip her straps to, it also lends additional durability. It gives more strength. She can put this pack on the floor of the gym, wherever it is she's working out or doing her dance at, and it won't hurt the fiber. It won't hurt the fabric, and it just makes it much more functional for what she is going to be using this for. In addition, she made a special request. So I don't know if you noticed these cuts in the base of this backpack base, but it obviously did not come with the pack. The base comes as a solid piece. And what I did was I carefully cut these slits. I measured and carefully cut these slits into the base because my daughter requested that if it were possible for me to maybe customize the backpack to also be able to hold her yoga mat. And so after a little bit of thought, I decided sure I could cut these slots. And then I purchased these Velcro straps. And the Velcro straps will just easily thread through the slits that I cut using a craft knife. And then I'll position them in a way that's obviously even. And then she'll be able to use this as a way to hold her yoga mat. Once it's rolled up, she can just roll that up and strap it to the bottom of her pack. The yarn that we're using is by Valley Yarns. It's called Goshen, and it is a cotton blend. 48% Peruvian cotton, 6% silk, and then 46% of Modal. Modal is it's sort of a semi-synthetic fiber that is made from the pulp of beechwood. It's fairly sustainable, it's eco-friendly, and that's pretty much right up my daughter's alley. And also it's strong. So much like cotton and other natural fibers, it's strong. So that's one of the reasons why I chose this particular brand, because it has a little bit of the silk in there, which is going to give the yarn itself a bit of a sheen, and it's going to add some additional strength. Cotton is always fairly strong anyways, and it makes a great yarn to use when making anything like a backpack or a purse or anything that requires a level of strength. The modal is also considered quite strong, so it really pairs well with the cotton. In addition, it's very absorbent, it's resistant to shrinkage, and it has a very good level of durability. So these are all important aspects to this backpack. Not only is it going to look nice, it's also got to be functional. It's got to be usable. So when spending this much time on a gift for somebody, it's also very important to understand exactly how they might use this gift, and even if they find this gift usable or of value to them, because it really sucks to spend the hours it's going to take to make this, just to have the person receiving it either not be able to use it or just simply not like it. So these are things that you want to take into consideration. But for her, yes, she wants it. She loves the idea. We already discussed the color palette. We discussed the motif. Yeah, I mean, she's 30 years old. It's her birthday present, right? I need to make sure that she likes it. It's not, and it's going to suit her and her taste and where she's at in her life at this time. So I don't have a problem with discussing these things with her, and you may decide that that is the right tact for you as well if you're making this as a gift for someone you love. So the colors that we're using today, as I just mentioned, I cleared up the color palette with my daughter to see what it was that she wanted and what would work best for her and her personal aesthetics. So we're using a plum, and this is kind of a lavender, but they call it purple. It's all the same yarn, the same brand of yarn, the same type of yarn. I want to maintain this level of consistency for this particular piece. This yarn right here is kind of this silvery gray color. I believe it's called Winter Lake. Anyways, I'll have the proper name for it in the description down below if you're interested. And then, of course, we've got the black. And this is going to be the color palette that we use for her piece. In addition, I'm going to, here a little further on in the video, do a little screenshot of the graph that I am following, that I designed and followed for the mountain scene in the background of this piece for her. And you can screenshot that and follow that for yourself if this is a pattern or a design that you happen to like yourself and would like to try. For this particular yarn and this particular project, I am going to be using a size E, or also it could be considered a size 4 or a 3.50 millimeter hook. I'm also going to be using a tapestry technique. So you'll notice that as I switch colors, the colors that aren't being used will be acting as padding yarn, for lack of a better description, with regards to the fabric that we are creating. Also for the black, I'm using the black on the base. So since it's just straight black and it doesn't have these other colors that will actually be worked into the design of the piece, I am going to use some scrap black yarn. It's cotton yarn, and it's a yarn that I didn't particularly care for. I tried it out a couple of years ago and I wasn't really happy with the results. So I set it aside, and it'll be perfect for this. I can use that as kind of the padding yarn for the black portion of the base of this backpack that I'm creating. And so that yarn goes to, it gets put to good use, and I don't have to use any more of this particular yarn than I need to for something that's not going to be seen or used for anything other than padding anyways. So that's something you might keep in mind when you do a project as well. If you want to save some money, use up some yarn that isn't doing anything but gathering dust. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So because this is a custom piece and I'm going to have to accommodate for the size of backpack that she would like to have, which is kind of a medium-sized backpack. She just needs it big enough to accommodate her silks and then also her rosin bag. So this is kind of a medium-sized base, and my crochet base, if it hangs over the edges a little bit once I'm finished with the approximate size of the base, that's okay. I have a specific idea of how many stitches I want going around the edges, so we'll see how that works out. Otherwise, this is how I'm going to handle this, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to measure the length of this base. So what I want to look at with regards to the measurements is I want to look at about where this 2 is sitting, because it's sitting right at about the edge there where this particular oval starts starts to make its curvature. And then on the other side, we have the 10 inches, and that's about where the second side has its other curve beginning. And so what I want to do for this particular piece is I want to look at between the 2 and the 10, and so that's going to give me 8 inches. And in that 8 inches, I can easily fit 42 chains with the yarn that I am using. You might find it to be different depending on the yarn that you are using, but mine will be 42 chains to begin with. And when you're finished, it will look something like this. And what I will end up doing is on the inside of my base, I will end up placing this piece, right? The inside facing up, because for her backpack, I'm actually going to line it. However, for you, it's totally optional. Not only do you not have to line it, you really don't need the backpack components either. You can just make a simple bag using this as the base. So this is going to be the side that everybody sees. And this will be the inside of it that no one will see really. And as you can see, it fits right around that base component. And that is perfect for me. Now hang on just a moment. I will show you how I actually get this particular stitch, right? It's not your typical single crochet. It's actually going to be a tapestry stitch. And for this backpack, I'm going to have 2 slightly different approaches to the tapestry stitch that we'll be using. And this one is one type, and then the second type is going to be what I use for the walls and or the bag itself. So let me go ahead and show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to actually show you how to do these tapestry stitches on some scrap yarn. So I'm using a bright green yarn, because otherwise I would be using a black yarn, and that's really hard to see on video. I'm going to use some orange yarn as my stitch markers. Now you can use your standard little stitch markers that just clip on, and just make sure that you move them each round that you make so that you can keep an eye on your count. But I prefer to use the yarn method of holding my place as a stitch marker. And so if you're going to use the yarn method, it's important to use a contrasting color yarn so it's easy to see. And then this is my padding yarn, as I had mentioned before, because the base of my work is all black. I don't need to worry about weaving in any other colors that I might otherwise weave in, because it's basically a tapestry fabric. Not at this point, but in order to maintain the same thickness and consistency of the fabric, I will need to put in a padding yarn. So this is the yarn that I mentioned before, and it originally came in a single spool like this, right, with just a single length of yarn. And so what I did was I took that spool and I wound the yarn into 3 similar size cakes. And then I took the yarn from each one of those cakes and I put them together, and then I wound them into a single cake with 3 strands of yarn for my padding. Now later on, I'll show you another technique that might serve you better, especially if you don't have a way to wind your own yarn. I happen to like this better for myself, but the other way I'll show you a little later in this video how to do, and you might find that one more helpful to you. So for the sake of example, I started off with 10 chains, and I'm going to lay my padding yarn over the top of that chain. And then I'm going to start my crochet. So in this case, I'm going to do my first one, but it's a little different than a regular single crochet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook, and I'm going to yarn over, pull that yarn through, and then I'm going to complete my single crochet with a yarn under. just like that. And when you're doing tapestry work, that is how you want to do it. It helps to pull your yarn in to the stitch in a way that it's not very visible. So again, I'm going to insert my hook into that next stitch. I'm going to yarn over. And then I'm going to finish my single crochet with a yarn under. And that just pulls the thread that you, or the thread or the yarn that you have in, and it just pulls it in tight. And you can see right there, so that very little of it peeks through. It pulls it through the back. So this is going to be the back of the piece that no one is really going to see anyways. And then the front of the piece is, we only have 2 stitches in, and you can already see where you're not seeing any of that black shine through. So again, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and then finish your single crochet with a yarn under. And we're going to continue that all the way to the last chain on this. So now this is kind of an important thing that I didn't mention just yet, but I'll mention it now. You're also going to want to put in your stitch marker. So I want my stitch marker placed into that very first single crochet. And then also I'm going to have the stitch marker placed in this crochet stitch right before the very last chain on the line. Because in the last chain on the line, we're going to go ahead and single crochet 3 single crochets in tapestry stitch style. So insert your hook, yarn over, and then yarn under to complete your single crochet. Insert hook, yarn over, then yarn under to complete. And then again, insert yarn over, and then yarn under. And that gives you your 3 single crochets on the end. And now I'm going to go ahead and place my yarn stitch marker right into that next stitch, because that's where I want that to be. And then I'm going to do a single crochet into that next stitch. And then I'm going to do it in each additional stitch until we get to the end of the other side in each of the next stitches. So you'll have a stitch mirroring each side of itself. Now we're into that very first chain that we had. And in that very first chain, we're going to go ahead and do the 3 single crochets as we've been doing them before. Yarn over, yarn under. Okay, so these little guys we can weave back in later. I don't really want them in there just yet, but I do want my padding yarn, my 3 strands of padding yarn. Okay, so now that we're back, I'm going to take my stitch marker. I'm going to pull it over because we're back to the very first single crochet, and this will be my first stitch for round 2. And then of course you'll continue on just like that. And this is what you'll do for the base. Now I'm going to show you quickly the slight variation to this tapestry stitch that I want you to do when you reach the actual sides of the bag, when it's time to go past the base and actually start doing the walls of the bag. And you'll see me do that too once I bring back the full piece and show you some of that. So by the time you get to the walls of this bag, you are going to want to work back loops only. So it'll look something like this. This is your back loop, and this is your front loops. So we want to work just the back loops. And for this, we'll go to the next stitch, and then I'll insert my hook in that back loop only, yarn over, and then I'll complete that single crochet with a yarn under, just like that. Again, next stitch, yarn over, and complete the yarn under. And that's back loop only. Okay. So you can already see the difference. How you have this little bit of a ridge. And that's fine. It gives you a slightly tighter stitch for when we're doing the wall, and that's good. And the padding yarn will be hidden quite nicely behind it. And it'll still make a very nice and strong fabric. Okay, so this pattern is pretty standard. You're going to pretty much find it anywhere that shows you how to crochet shapes. But I will have it put up on the next few frames so that you can simply screenshot that and print it off, or whatever it is you're going to do with it, and use that to make your base with. And then we will be right back. Now that you finished your base, it should look like this, or something like this. And you have these tails from your padding yarn. So these cords, this padding yarn, or also known as cords, we're just going to kind of push that out of the way for now, because we don't need that as padding anymore. And so a little later, we're just going to go ahead and weave that in. But for now, this is where we finished. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to count 20 stitches over. 20 stitches is going to put you right in the center of this base. And this center part is really where your seam for the back of your backpack, or the back of that fabric, is going to be, right up here, right through the back. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. And that's going to put me right there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the next two colors that I'm going to use closest to my black, if you remember what my pattern looked like. And I am going to use the first two colors that I'm not going to be using just yet as my padding. So that's going to be the plum and the purple. And then I have the black, which is going to be my main color that we're going to see for the next couple of rounds. So I'm going to put my padding right there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slip stitch that in. And then I'm going to proceed to do a single crochet in each stitch all the way around. So that's going to be 150 stitches in the black with my purple and my plum color as padding. And then remember, for this tapestry stitch, we're now going to work in the back loop only. So just like that. So then just one more time, we're going to insert our hook into that back loop only, yarn over, and pull that yarn through, and then we're going to finish up the single crochet step with the yarn under, and that gives us our single crochet for our tapestry stitch. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing that all the way around, and when we've completed this first round of the walls, we're going to be in a position where I can show you how we're going to start changing colors. I have now finished the first round of what is going to be the wall of this backpack. And I know I referred to these colored yarns as padding yarn, but really I should be referring to it as carried yarn at this point, because I'm going to start using these particular yarns in the actual design. Also, to keep in mind that as we did before, except where we started over here to make the base of this and we worked in a spiral, we're going to continue to work in a spiral. So it's really important to maintain a stitch marker, whichever system you choose to use, in order to know where your round begins and ends. So I'm going to go ahead and use this piece of yarn, which is going to be long enough to accommodate the height of the walls of this bag. And so that'll be my first round. And as mentioned before, all my other rounds after this are all my stitches are going to be done in the back loop only. Okay, so if you're following the graph, or if you're doing your own design, let's say you've just decided to do stripes, or you've come across a design that you happen to like better that suits your personal aesthetics, just needing to find the center of your back piece, which is basically going to be the center of the back of your bag, is going to be important. And here we already found that. We did the once around in our first round, and now we're beginning the second round. And according to my graph, my second round is going to require me to single crochet 14 more stitches in black. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that, which will give me a total of 15 stitches, except when I get to that 14th stitch, I'm going to do things just a little different. I'm going to change colors. And for those of you who are unsure as to how to change colors properly, I will show you how that's done. Okay, so now I'm at my 14th stitch, and I want that stitch to be black, but I am also changing to a new color. And according to my graph, I want to change it to the plum color. So what I'm going to do is, in that 14th stitch, I'm going to begin my single crochet, because that stitch I want black, but the next stitch I want to be the plum. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through that stitch until I have one more step left. And then at the last step of the stitch, that is when I'm going to change my colors. So I just pulled my plum through, and now I have my black thread as part of my carried yarn section. And then I'm going to go in and make my plum colored stitch. And then according to my graph, I've got one more plum colored stitch, but then it'll be black afterwards. So I'm going to yarn over, and then since I have one more step left into this stitch to complete my single crochet, I'm going to switch out and do the last step of that stitch in the new color. I'll do this a couple of more times, and then I'll let you know what we're going to do next. So I have 4 stitches in black to do now. And then my next stitch, I want to switch over to the plum. So you can see what I'm doing here. And as you're working, you want to make sure that your carried yarn is always pulled taut. Not so tight that it causes your fabric to bunch up, but just tight enough that you don't have your carried yarn pooching through your fabric piece. So you can kind of see how that's going right there. I don't know if you can see that purple very well against that black. So now I'm going to complete the single purple color, or plum color actually, that I want in this space, but I only have the one. So I'm going to switch back to black again. I'm going to change my color in the last step of that plum stitch that I'm making. And now I want 3 in the black. So now I've just single crocheted 2 blacks, and I need 1 more black according to my graph. And this is where I'm going to do my color change. So of course I'm going to insert my hook one more time. I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull that through. And then I have one more step in which to complete my single crochet, and that is when I'm going to make my color change. And I'm making my color change to what they call purple. It looks lavender to me, but for the consistency of the name given to this color by the manufacturer, we'll call it purple. And then that one is going to be a yarn over under, according to the tapestry stitch. And then we're going to go ahead and make that stitch, yarn over. And then because I only need 1 of this color in this particular stitch, I now switch back to my black, which is also going to be the color change is going to happen in the last step of this particular stitch, and that's going to be a yarn under. And then now we have our stitch. We have our color in there. And I'm going to continue to follow my graph all the way around. And I'm going to continue to do that in a spiral using my stitch marker to make sure that I have my appropriate stitches, because the round should consist of 150 stitches all the way around for each round. And then when I get a little further along with this piece, then we'll discuss a little more about some other techniques and give you a peek at how this particular backpack is coming along. So now that I've made a little bit of progress on the walls of this bag, I've come to the point in my work where I don't really need the black anymore, at least not for a while. I won't need it until we actually are ready to do the trim on the upper lip of this backpack. However, what I will need is my Winter Lake color, and I'm going to start using that in a couple of places in this particular round. So as you can see, just to recap, I have been using my yarn, my spare contrasting yarn, to act as a stitch marker for where I begin and where I end. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that stitch marker in that next stitch space. And I'm going to change colors, not in the sense that we've been doing it before, but in the sense that I am going to end the use of the black, at least for now, and I'm going to pick up the Winter Lake color in order to get that set in so that we can start using that. So it's fairly simple. All I'm going to do is I am going to cut about this much of the black, and I'm going to put that aside. And then I'm going to get my Winter Lake color, and I'm going to just lay it right on in there. Just lay it next to all the other colors, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail because I'm going to go back and I'm going to weave that in. So much like I'm going to weave in these ends, I'm going to go ahead and weave in this end as well a little later. And so for now, I'm using the plum color in my work. And I'm going to continue as before. So now we're going to start using the Winter Lake color. So when I get a little further along, it's going to be a good time to show you how to use a single strand of yarn as padding yarn. How to do that without having to, as I did before, turn one cake into 3 cakes and then back into 1 cake again in order to get 3 strands of yarn for my padding yarn. I'll show you how to do it with just 1 strand from 1 cake of yarn. So this is what I have so far. You can see the pattern, and then on the back you can see my seam, or more accurately, my yarn that I used for my stitch marker. And I still have several more rows to go, but those next several rows are going to be this Winter Lake color. So in order to save on this yarn right here, this purple and plum color yarn, because I don't need it until I get to the trim at the top of the backpack walls, I cut them loose, but I'm still going to need a padding yarn. And so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to show you how to take a single strand of yarn and turn it into an ongoing padding yarn as you finish up the next several rows in a single color. So basically what I want to do is I want to fold it in 3. So you can see that by folding it in 3, I have something like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to lay that over the padding that I already have, or the little bit of the padding that I already have. And I'm going to continue as usual. Except to begin, I'm going to stick my hook in through the end loop of that yarn, that padding yarn, just so that I can anchor it in there. And then I'm going to continue as I normally would. Okay, so this is what I have. You can see where it's kind of a little loose and bunchy. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull each one of these yarns just a little bit. With your padding yarn, be careful not to pull it too much, because you might, at least at this point, because you might pull your loose end out, and that's not really what you want to do. So you just want to kind of pull them all together. Just find them all and just kind of pull them together. As you can see, I've just pulled that out a little bit, but that's fine because I still have these other pieces. So it's not going to affect the height or the thickness of my row, but I'll just wrap it back in and just continue on. Okay, so we've made sure that our padding is all pulled nice and even on the inside, and that our backpack isn't gathered. And so now that I'm here, so it's important to kind of straighten out your padding yarn and any carry yarn as you go along, so you don't have any wonky edges or any edges that look like they're pulled too tight or hanging too loose. And with this, I'm going to continue to crochet until we get to this end right here, where we don't have more than a small bit of it hanging loose. And then I'll show you how to handle that, how to hook in more yarn to continue using padding yarn from a single strand of yarn. So you can see I can tug on that a little bit, and I don't have very much play, so that tells me that it's in there nice and good and even. And then you can also see that in the straightness of the edging there of that row. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the yarn or the strand, and I'm going to just hook in there, and I'm going to get a bit of that yarn that's connected to my spool, and I'm just going to pull it gently through, and I'm going to hold it like that, and that gives me some more padding yarn. It allows me to fold that yarn over again and gives me padding yarn in which to continue to work with without having to use more than one spool of yarn in order to do that, or one strand of thread. And I can continue on that way for as long as I need to. So I'm going to finish this bag, and when I come back, I am going to show you the construction of the bag itself. Also, if you want to hang on to the last few minutes of this video, you can see how I make the lace motif that will eventually be the main focal point of the front of this bag. So if you're still watching after this much time, good on you. Now I'm going to get into giving you a little rundown on what it is I do, or at least what kind of lacing process I'm going to go through with this particular piece. So for this lace motif, I'm going to be using DMC size 12 embroidery floss. They're cotton pearl, or pearl cotton, however you want to say it. And this particular embroidery floss or thread is approximately the same size as a crochet thread size 20. So either one is going to be fine for the size that I need. And what I'm going to be doing is I am crocheting this cording. And I'm going to need quite a bit of it for the outline of the silks in the motif that I'm working on. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a moment. The hook that I'm using is a size 10. It's a steel hook, number 10, and it's a 0.75 millimeter. It's very tiny. It's very sharp. I have impaled myself once or twice with a hook this size. It's no fun. No bueno. So now the next thing I'm going to do with the cording is I am going to figure out where on this piece I want a little bit of a thicker outline. And so I've chosen to do that with the silks. And how I do that is I'm going to figure out about which size piece that I want. And then I'm going to whip stitch it onto my design. Now, my design itself was inspired from a photograph by a photographer by the name of Christopher Foote, F-O-O-T-E. I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. At any rate, the photo itself was titled Silk Silhouette. So it may be worth looking into so that you can actually see the photo that was taken. It's absolutely beautiful. It's apparently one of my daughter's favorite photos of all times, at least currently. And this is what she wanted her lace work to resemble. So I did a basic line drawing. I just rendered a line drawing of what I saw in the photo. And since it's a silhouette, it's going to lend itself perfectly for lace work. And now I come in, right? My personal artistic flair will come in. So I didn't trace the image, but I did draw the image. And I made a couple of small tweaks according to my aesthetics and what I thought might look good on her backpack, or what I thought might improve the composition of the actual line drawing itself. But the photo that I took this from is just stunning. It's something that that you might want to look into. So I'll have Christopher's name and the name of the photo in the description box below if you're interested in hunting that down for yourself. So as you can see here, I've already started. And basically, I'm going to go ahead and I'll do a little bit here. I'll go ahead and whip stitch that on. I'll figure out about how much of this I'm going to need. And I'm going to just go ahead and start working that fabric, that lace piece, I guess. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you found a lot of value and learned a few techniques. Until we meet again, I'd just like to tell all you wonderful fiber artists to stay safe, stay amazing, and above all, stay crafty. Bye-bye now.